I'm just going to jump into it here. I'm going to give you an acronym, FACTS, on how you can intelligently discuss this issue with your friends and family, co-workers and so forth. When the issue comes up, what about creation? It seems like evolution makes so much sense. So I'm going to give you a little acronym to use with it, but it's called FACTS, F.a.c.t.s. So this will be an easy way for you to remember most of these points. Now, the first introduction of Satan in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. And we're told that the very first thing he does is he's able to ask the question, did God really say? This is one thing you need to know about the devil, is Satan is able to cause us to question the most blatantly obvious of God's commands, of God's word. All right? Did God really say, Satan asked in Genesis 3:1, and the answer is, yeah, he did. God said crystal clear in Genesis 2:17, in the day that you eat of it, you will surely die. All right? Genesis 1:1 is very clear. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Pretty crystal clear, straightforward, right? Psalm 19:1, David will say, the heavens declare the handiwork of God. Pretty crystal clear and straightforward. Yet, since 1859, really, the publication of Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, there's been this, did God really create everything? And so I want to give you this acronym. So let's just kick it because I want to make a lot of room for text questions tonight. The F stands for fossil evidence. Simply put, there is no fossil evidence to this date that overwhelmingly confirms transition of species. It doesn't exist. This is why they're still looking for the so-called, the proverbial missing link, and they will never find it because it doesn't exist. Now, I'm talking about transition of species. Very important. Okay, so according to Darwinian evolution, okay, I'm going to make things very simple for you. Okay, according to Darwinian evolution, there should be a transition of species. Okay, so let's say Dave Bowen here is, let's say he is a, well, we'll have to just make it easy, a dog. He's not. Let's just say he is. All right, and he's going to turn into a cat. All right, be Melissa, just for sake of example. All right, so there should be a fossil record of a creature that's 99% cat, 1% dog. All right, 98% cat, 2% dog, 97% 3, 96 4, 95 5, 9. You get the picture. Doesn't exist. Is there transition of species within their species? Absolutely. Okay. I've told you this story before, but I need to tell it again. My mom was really big, as you know, into, well, you would know, but my mom was big into animal shelters and rescuing animals and so forth. And I remember going with her once to this place up in Wyoming for this woman who had bought all these acres to save these animals who had been abused. Some of them had been tortured and so forth. And I remember, seriously, there was like a dog. It's like a wiener dog, and it had the head of like a, what was it, a St. Bernard. Yeah. And you know, seriously, it's like Island of Dr. Moreau or something. I mean, it's just like weird. But it was still a dog. Okay, it was still a dog. All right. You can breed a poodle with whatever. Okay, greyhound. I mean, it's going to be weird. Still a dog. We're not turning a dog into a cat. So I'm just oversimplifying things for you. So the first thing you need to know is fossil record. Guess what? There is no fossil evidence of species transitioning into another species. That's overwhelmingly, convincingly. There's all these theories, but nothing's overwhelmingly a slam dunk. In fact, many of the fossils that are found, check this out, it looks like something cataclysmic happened. I mean, there will be like entire families, okay, of something like a Triceratops family found, an entire family of mammoths that all of a sudden, all at once, they died at the exact same time. Okay, it looks like something cataclysmic happened. And one more point, I'll just throw this one out for fun. Many of them look like they drowned in the positions they're found. Okay, the way their bodies are stretched out, it looks like they died from drowning. We don't know, but I just throw that one out there. Okay, I'm going to move along fast. So fossils, there is no record, there is no evidence. Okay, so facts, F.a.c.t.s. The A, ape man follies. That's what I'm going to call this one, ape man follies. All right, so have you ever seen the chart, you know, of people, like the evolutionary chart? You know, it starts off on kind of like a chimpanzee, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. You know, it's walking and so forth. I have a friend who's a feminist, and her version of that, the final evolution is a businesswoman carrying a briefcase, But anyways, let me give you just a few examples here. Nebraska man was constructed from a single solitary tooth. Ironically, while this was happening, it was later found out that this was actually, they took one tooth. Okay, so guys, are you with me? Kathy, do we have a slide for that by chance? Or not? Okay. It was from one single tooth, guys. Okay, are you with me? And eons are created. An entire, category is created from a single tooth. Now, this tooth was later found out to be that of an extinct pig. Okay. So, I was thinking here, while the scientists were trying to make a monkey out of a pig made a monkey out of scientists. Right? Turns out just to be one tooth, that of an extinct pig. Java man, a Dutch anthropologist on the island of Java, discovered this in 1891. It was constructed from a skull cap, a thigh bone, 3 teeth. Yeah. Skull cap, thigh bone, and 3 teeth. An entire skeleton. Dude, seriously? Seriously? That's all you got? And you construct an entire generation, this entire eon, this entire millennia of so-called transition of species. And that's all you've got. Can I just say, that's sloppy scholarship. That's just weak. That's more imagination than evidence. Okay? Piltdown man. This one turned out to be an urban legend, actually. You remember, an urban legend is something that's false. It's repeated so often, people begin to think it's true. Again, I'm just going to cut to the chase here. This one was totally a fraud. 100% fraud. It was actually a human skull. It was found out to have file marks on it. Some canine teeth had been filed down to look more human. And the anthropologist admitted to really he was just seeking additional funds. He was trying to explain to people, hey, look, I'm onto something. I need more funding so I can continue my digs. Okay? So, Peking man also was originally constructed from a single tooth. But within the same tooth were skull caps and, I'm willing to admit, tools. Skull caps, some bones, tools. One tooth. They create, again, an entire era in this entire system, Peking man. Now, what we have noticed, and did anyone ever see Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom? Okay. Do you remember where they're eating the monkey brains? Okay, well, it appears to this day that monkey brains within that part of the world, it's still considered a delicacy. Okay? Yeah. And so most people would just simply look at that and say, oh, well, they were using the tools to, skull caps. But you see what the evolutionists do. Oh, see, they're pulling this information together, putting it together. Oh, this is, now these, Peking man was actually using tools. So ape man follies. So F, fossil evidence, there is none for transition of species. A, there's just a lot of gaps in this theory. There's some huge gaps here. There's some sloppy scholarship. Well, now I'm going to go Christian on you. The C is creation. Genesis 1 and 2, it contains the creation, God's creation, the ordering of the cosmos. And, a lot of times people have this image of God. He's kind of like the Far Side God. Do you remember the comics Far Side? That God's kind of like this grandfatherly figure, pulling levers, and stuff like that, hitting the smite button and whatever on people. But really, I want you to see from Genesis 1 and 2 how God really is and how everything's been created just for us. I'm going to skip some of this, but if you read Genesis 1 and 2, you'll see everything was created, and then he creates Adam and Eve. But first, everything was created just for us. It was created just right for us. And here are some things about God that are pretty intriguing, according to Genesis 1 and 2, that you may find surprising. That God tells Adam and Eve, I want you to have sex. It says, I want you to be fruitful and multiply in 127. Now it's Adam and Eve. All right? Adam and Eve. Not Adam and Steve Zimmerman. All right? It's not Adam. It's not Adam. It's not Adam and Eve and Brigham. All right? Just Adam and Eve. Married couple. I want you to have sex. That's what God says. All right? He tells them, I want you to eat. That's pretty good. All right? So far, so good. When you have sex, I want you to eat. That's most people's favorite things right there. Behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with, you have them for food. That's Genesis 1:29. That's the creation. That's what God's created us, created you to have sex with your spouse. He's created you to eat. In fact, you'll even notice in the Revelation, there's a marriage supper of the Lamb. Eating is involved throughout the Bible. He says we're told to steward the earth. We're told to garden it. The Hebrew word is kabosh. I've had Pastor Tom Moffitt before tell me hey, you need to put the kibosh on that volunteer. They're out of control. You need to, bring some direction. All right. Well, we're to garden the earth. Really, we should, as followers of Jesus, we should have led that and not the environmentalists. And we're told to fill the earth, human migration. In fact, this is what really happens in Genesis, verse 11, the Tower of Babel. They weren't trying to build a stairway to heaven so much, like Led Zeppelin, but they were just congregating. And God says, no, I want you to multiply. I want you to fill the earth. And of course, that's happened. Really, if you think about some of the things that you really like to do, you can trace it back to the garden, right? You can trace it that you were created for that. I'll hear some people say, I just love painting. Well, yeah, of course you do. You're created in the image of God. He's a creator. Of course you do. Or you'll see people post these sunsets and things on Facebook, and they're enjoying. Well, yeah, see, God created it. Aesthetics, of course, God created you that way. I know some people who just love gardening. They love the plant, and they're like, yeah, of course. I know some people's like, yeah, let's just play one more round of cards. Let's just fellowship and hang out. Well, of course, you were created for community. I meet single adults saying, man, I just really want to be married. Well, of course, you were created that way. So creation testifies that there's a creator, all right, that it's all created just for you. There was have you ever heard of the biodome or the biosphere? It actually was not technically a disaster, but they were trying to figure out, could we colonize Mars or even the moon? And what they realized is, man, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to make this thing happen. It's a lot of money to make this thing happen. But God says, let there be light. And there's light. Okay, so creation itself. Let me just give you one example here from creation. We happen to just be the very perfect distance from the sun. Right? If we were much further, we would freeze. Mars ain't the kind of place to raise a kid. Okay, so we were just the right place, right? If we were much closer, we would burn, right? We would just roast and be scorched, but we're just the right distance. We just happen to have an ozone layer. Okay? We just happen to spin at the right speed. If our rotation were much quicker, there'd be like hurricane-like conditions all the time. We just happen to have soil that can sustain vegetation. We have water, and we not only have water, we have frozen water, we have fresh water. Okay, it's been created with you in mind. It's showing God's love. You guys who have dated know what I'm talking about, but when I was dating my wife, I wanted everything to be just right. Right? I want it to look right, I want it to smell right, I want to get the right table, at the right restaurant, the right food. Why? Because I loved her. Everything has been created just right for you. I watch these shows like Blue Planet and stuff like that on Discovery Channel and stuff, and it's kind of interesting. Now, I've noticed that there's some creatures, like you probably noticed, but polar bears only live in the north. They're not in Antarctica. Penguins only live in Antarctica. They don't live in the north. And there's some creatures who can't survive in different climates. You know what? There is one creature that can survive in every climate. Yep, humans. The planet was created for you. f.a.c.t.s. So let me, f.a.c.t.s. F, fossils, A, ape man follies, or follies rather. The C is creation, testifies that it was created for you. The T is going to be theology. Carl Sagan, who was an atheist, he wrote a novel called Pale Blue Dot, and that was the basis. It also became a movie. He wrote a book called Contact, and it was a movie that came out in the early 90s, and Jodie Foster played in it. And I remember there was this scene where she's looking out. She was an astronomer, and she makes this statement like, if we're the only intelligent beings, then that's a lot of wasted space. Well, not necessarily. Not if you're God, someone who's infinite. To a finite being, perhaps that's how it would look. But if you're infinite, infinite means to have no beginning and no end. God is eternal, right? Sometimes when I speak at like a VBS or kids camp and stuff like that, inevitably some kid will ask me, Well, who created God? Right? Well, it's like asking the question, what does the number 9 smell like? It's what in philosophy, it's like in philosophy we call this a category error because God's eternal. I know that's hard for us to get our brain around. He's eternal, no beginning, no end. But look, the very way that we measure time wasn't even created until day 4. We measure time by a planet rotating on its axis and going around us. That's how. Well, God didn't even speak that into existence until day 4. He's eternal, no beginning, no end. I know it's hard for us to get our brains around that, but here's some theology for you, though. It's real easy. You got this one verse already memorized. In the beginning, God. You can just stop right there. In the beginning, God. What? He created the heavens and the earth. God said, let there be light, and there was light. We've got to keep in mind, this is a being who says, let there be light, and there's light. Right? I mean, that's pretty amazing. Look, most of us in this room, not all, but most of us have a 3-pound brain. And we're talking about a being who says, let there be light, and there's light. There are going to be things about God we'll never comprehend. Right? I mean, only God is omniscient. Not even the angels are omniscient. Okay, there's only one omniscient being. All right, and it's going to be hard. There's going to just simply be things we can't get our brains around. So he's an eternal being. So let me give you the S, and this stands for stars. f.a.c.t.s, stars. Genesis 1:14 says, then God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. I'm going to read it one more time. Genesis 1:14. God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. Why were, according to Genesis 1:14, why were the stars created? Seasons. Okay, so before we had this, all right, people pretty much used the stars as a calendar. Right? If you ever heard the expression blue moon, right? Every 28 days there's a full moon. So sometimes the way the month will work out, there'll be 2 full moons in 1 month, and the phrase is, well, that's a blue moon, meaning it's pretty rare you have 2 full moons in 1 month. All right, if you ever notice, you study these societies like the Mayans, and I mean, pretty much there's ancient civilizations all over the planet. They built these ancient observatories. Why? Well, that was their calendar. Stonehenge, more than likely, it very well could have been a calendar. Okay, it was really important when you're an agrarian culture to know when to plant, when to harvest. You got to be on time. It's like an ancient farmer's almanac, if you will. And God tells us right there, look, it's for let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And so this is one of the reasons, by the way, where the psychics really have it messed up. Right, who are consulting, the people who are reading the horoscopes, and they want to give you your love horoscope. God's not obligated to follow the direction of Saturn or Virgo or anything. Right? I remember one time I was in a meeting when I was in corporate America, and they were kind of doing like an icebreaker to get to know each other. And so the question was, hey, what is your horoscope sign? Right? I really didn't know what mine was. People were doing, everyone else seemed to be really well versed. Like one guy's like, yeah, man, I'm a Leo. That means I'm bold and courageous. And this other girl's like, yeah, I'm a Pisces. That means I'm, like moody or I don't know, something. All right? I didn't know what I was. I was like, I'm a Baptist. I don't know what I am. I know I believe in the creator of the stars. Right? I was like, actually, that's pretty good. It's like, yeah, I believe in the creator of the stars. Right? So somehow, like the New Agers and our friends up in Sedona, they've hijacked all of this idea about the stars. But I actually do want to show you something that I use sometimes. I feel like the stars do testify about God, just as David says in Psalm 19:1, the heavens declare the handiwork of God. So let me give you something that's for free. All right, so if you're I happen to be an amateur astronomer. I have it's a Copernican style telescope. It's old school. They make telescopes today that you can buy where you just punch in Jupiter and it'll whir and it'll go right there for it. I wanted to learn like the old trade, just like the way Copernicus and the ancient astronomers did. And so normally how it works is you start off with the moon, and then you branch out. So I'm just going to walk you through something real quick. It's kind of like the gospel beads and stuff like that. So it's not in the Bible, but it's something I use sometimes to share the gospel with people. So you start off with the moon. Okay. That's the one that you cut your teeth on as an astronomer. Did you realize that the moon is the perfect size for us? I don't know if you know this, but if it were much bigger, we would have massive tidal flooding all the time. If it were much smaller, our oceans would stagnate. Did you know also it's created perfectly for us to have a perfect lunar eclipse? And in fact, there's been some scientific discoveries that have been made when a perfect eclipse happens. So our moon is just perfect for us. We could go on to Mars. Mars ain't the kind of planet. No, I'm just kidding. Let's go to Jupiter. Okay, it's a beautiful planet. Okay, normally Jupiter is the next one because it's so bright. It's so easy to pick out in the night sky. It's very easy for you to see. But it's beautiful. And even with a really good set of binoculars, you can almost make out the stripes, the cloud banks. And it has those stripes on Jupiter because it's spinning so fast. I mean, we would be like marshmallows on that planet. We would die, we would suffocate because there's no oxygen on that planet. It also serves as a comet sweeper for us. I'll take you out to the constellations. Okay, the easiest one to pick out is Big Dipper. And do you know the Big Dipper is actually mentioned in the Bible? Its most ancient name is referred to as the bear and her cubs. And God says this to Job. In Job chapter 38, verses 31 and 32, he goes, "Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion?" Okay, that's another constellation. Orion's really easy to pick out. It's the one that has like 3 stars in a row. You've probably seen it before. It looks like it's like in a rectangle. That's Orion. So God says, "Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion? Can you bring forth a constellation in its season and guide the bear, Ursa Major, Big Dipper with her cubs?" Now, here's what's happening. It's kind of interesting. In Job chapter 38, verse 2 is really the key verse here. God says to Job, "All right, I want you to gird up your loins like a man." All right, you know what that means? What's a loincloth? Okay, this is what God's saying to Job. Look, you guys been whining, you've been groaning and moaning, and bickering. Now it's my turn. I want you to put on your jock strap, because now I got some questions for you. I got some questions for you. You've been whining, moaning, groaning, complaining, bickering. Okay, now I got some questions for you, Job. All right, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you bring forth the Big Dipper when it's time? No. God says, I can. Do you see what God's kind of saying here, really? Who are you to question me? I'm not asleep on the job. I know exactly what I'm doing. You realize I speak constellations into existence, and you dare to question me? I know what I'm doing. You're going to have to trust me. Amos chapter 5, verse 8 says this. He also names some constellations. "He who made the Pleiades in Orion and changes deep darkness in the morning, who also darkens day and the night, who calls the waters of the sea and pours them out on the surface of the earth. The Lord is his name." He's your God. Here's what God is saying through this as well, through Amos and through Job. And here's what I want to say to you tonight. You got some problems? I know. You got some worries? I know. But the one who controls the Pleiades constellation, he loves you. The one who can bring forth the Big Dipper when it's time, he's got your back. Right? He knows your favorite drink at Starbucks. Right? He knows what's keeping you up at night. He knows what's going to happen at your company this time next year. He knows who he has in mind for you to spend the rest of your life with. It's not a problem for the one who controls the constellations. That's what God is saying. I've got it under control. Don't worry. So when you look at the stars, may you remember that the one who made those stars, he knows you by name. Let me give you this one verse. It's Isaiah chapter 40, verse 26, if you want to write this down. And this is God speaking. Isaiah's recording his dialogue with God. And the Lord says to Isaiah, "Lift up your eyes and look into the heavens. Who created all of these stars? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls each of them by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing." So may you remember that you are God's most favorite creation. You know what? They don't even have all the stars named yet. They never will. God knows each one by name. And he knows you by name as well. He knows exactly what you're going through. All right, let me do this in all of 2 minutes, and I want to take your text questions. All right, so here's another thing I kind of made up. So f.a.c.t.s, all right, fossil evidence, ape man follies, creation, theology. Okay, the Bible tells us, and the stars themselves testify to the fact that God created the universe, all right? He knows the constellations by name. But this is something I made up. There's like these gospel beads, like black stands for sin, red stands for the blood of Jesus, white, you've probably seen that. Well, so I kind of made this up because I kind of I'm trying to reclaim the stars from the New Agers. All right, so there's the constellation of Gemini. And so I use this when I'm talking to my friends of that nature to say this is the story of Adam and Eve. All right, so God made Adam and Eve, and they were naked and not ashamed. God's plan was to be in harmony. God's plan was for Adam and Eve to enjoy each other. And so I can tell the gospel through the stars, so I'm going to start there. But then the devil showed up. Hydra, the serpent, showed up. Okay, there's a constellation called Hydra. And the serpent was more crafty. Did God really say? Genesis 3:1. And you know the story that they fall. There's a constellation called Cancer. Okay? And so then sin enters humanity at that point. And this is where really all of our problems are. I mean, if you watch the news, 99.9% of all the problems are because people are sinning. That means they're making the wrong choice. That's what sin is when we make the wrong choice. And that's where problems come from. Whenever we sin, it just adds to the brokenness of the world. But then there's Leo. We're going to rename Leo Aslan. All right? And so Aslan is, C.S. Lewis based that off of the prophecy of when John looks to the future of Revelation 5, verse 5. It says, "Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah." All right, and it's an interesting scene because no one can break the seal. All right, there's no one that can break the seal. And John says they looked high, they looked low. There was no one that was worthy, but there was one, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And then finally, two more. Finally, there is a constellation out there also called Cygnus, or the Swan. It kind of looks like a cross to me, all right? Some people even refer to it as the Northern Cross. I actually can use the stars. Again, I know I'm just doing my own thing, but I'll use the stars some way to tell the story of the gospel in the same way some people would use the gospel, bracelet beads or 4 spiritual laws or something like that. As an amateur astronomer, here's one thing that was kind of surprising to me. So with the planets, guess which planet was one of the hardest to actually check off the list? Yep. Pluto's really, really hard. Really, really hard. But it wasn't Pluto. It's Mercury. Yeah, it's the first one. And you can go to websites and stuff, and it was kind of interesting. But almost always the description for Mercury, like you can go to these websites and they'll tell you where to look. And this is the description. Mercury, hidden in the glare of the sun. Because it's so close. And what came to my mind was John 3:30, when John the Baptist says, "He must increase, I must decrease." I don't know about you, but I want to be hidden in the glare of the sun, S-O-N, right? And so, when you look at the stars, may you, one, see that God is their creator, all of them. He determines their number and knows them by name, Psalm 147, verse 4. He created them with you in mind. And he can handle your situation, your problem, whatever you're going through right now. I pray that the next time you see the Big Dipper, you remember, that's my God. If he can handle the Big Dipper, he can handle me in my crisis, whatever it may be. Amen?